Many of you might not have the time to delve into a 480-page novel, but in just a few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the entire enchanting and surreal world of Haruki Murakami's Kafka on the Shore. Now, this book is like a weird and wonderful dream. There are two main people in it. First, there's this kid, Kafka Tamura. At the tender age of 15, Kafka Tamura finds himself compelled to run away from home, haunted by a daunting prophecy foretold by his father. Additionally, the narrative introduces Nakata. He's an older guy who can't read anymore because of a strange thing that happened to him. But guess what? He can talk to cats. As they go on their separate adventures, the story unfolds with a series of extraordinary and surreal events that will link the fates of the two protagonists, while also making sure they will never physically meet. Kafka on the Shore is like two stories running side by side, kind of like two trains on different tracks but heading in the same direction. The way the book is written is very interesting. It's like the author flips back and forth between these two stories, one chapter at a time. So one chapter talks about one story, and the next chapter switches to the other story. Murakami's work is like stepping into a dream where each corner you turn, you find something new and totally unexpected. Will the prophecy happen as foretold? What happened to Nakata, and why can he talk to cats? We are about to find out in the next few minutes, but make sure to watch all the way through. Storyline 1. At the beginning, we meet Kafka Tamura, a 15-year-old boy who's had it pretty rough. When he was really little, his mom and sister left without any explanation, and he has lived with his strange father ever since. On his 15th birthday, he makes a big decision. He's going to run away from home to escape the Oedipal prediction his dad told him, that Kafka would end up hurting him, and he will get sexual with his mom and sister. Now, Kafka's got this imaginary friend named Crow, which is more like the voice in Kafka's head. His secret buddy helps him make this decision. Kafka takes a bus to get away, and that's where he meets Sakura, a friendly girl who starts chatting with him. So later on, when they stop, Sakura gives Kafka her number, just in case he needs someone to call. Kafka is not sure where he's going, but ends up in Shikoku. He spends a lot of time in this private library in Takamatsu, called the Komura Library. That's where he bumps into Oshima, the librarian. Kafka is staying in the hotel, and one evening, something really strange happens. He passes out after dinner and wakes up 4 hours later with his shirt all stained with blood. Scared and confused, he calls Sakura, the girl from the bus. Even though it's the middle of the night, she's super nice and lets him stay at her place. They have a close moment, but when Kafka wakes up, he finds he's alone. Not wanting to be a bother, he decides to leave Sakura's place. So, Kafka ends up at the library and spills his whole story to Oshima, who is very understanding and accommodating, and offers Kafka a place to stay. He even says he will earn a little money by helping out around the library. This arrangement proves to be beneficial for him. The person in charge of the library is Mrs. Psyche. She's not young anymore, but still really charming. And she's got this air of mystery about her. But when she was young, she was a famous singer-songwriter, known for just one song called Kafka on the Shore. That's actually where the book gets its name. After her hit song, she just vanished from the public eye and lived a quiet life. The song was about her boyfriend who was tragically killed because someone mistook him for someone else. She thought of him as her soulmate. But soon, Kafka discovers a mysterious connection between himself and Mrs. Psyche. So Kafka starts to fall for Mrs. Psyche. He even starts to think she might be his mom. One night, he sees a ghost in his room where he's sleeping. That room used to belong to Mrs. Psyche's boyfriend. The ghost looks like a young Mrs. Psyche, and it just stares at a painting of her boyfriend on the beach, then leaves. This ghost visit keeps happening every night, and Kafka can't figure out if he's falling for the ghost of young Mrs. Kaiki or the real older Mrs. Kaiki. One night, the real Mrs. Kaiki comes into Kafka's room, kind of like her ghost did, and they end up being together. In that moment, it's like Mrs. Kaiki is young again, and she's with her boyfriend from the past. Meanwhile, Kafka's in trouble because the police thinks he might have murdered his dad. So, Oshima takes Kafka to his brother's cabin, hidden away in a deep, mysterious forest. That night, Kafka Tamura has this dream that's kind of in between reality and something super surreal. He dreams he's in Sakura's apartment and ends up being with her, even though she doesn't want it, and neither does Crow, his imaginary friend. This dream kind of breaks the scary prophecy his dad told him about, that he'd end up having intimacy with his mother and sister. The next day, Kafka decides to explore the forest. He comes across these two soldiers who were thought to be missing for years. They're guarding an entrance. Kafka goes through it, and after a long walk, he finds a village in a valley. He's given a house to stay in, and guess who's there? a 15-year-old Mrs. Psyche doing housework. Then, the real Mrs. Psyche shows up and tells him he needs to leave the village fast, through the same entrance he came in. Kafka listens and heads back to Oshima's cabin. Oshima's brother, Sada, picks him up and they go back to the library. Kafka decides it's best for him to go back to Tokyo and keep studying, but before he leaves, he takes the painting which Mrs. Kaiki left for him in her will. He hops on the first bus to Tokyo and falls asleep on a rainy day. Storyline 2. Now, the other chapter talks about Nakata. What secrets lie in Nakata's past that led to his unique abilities? And how will his fateful encounter with a mysterious figure change the course of his journey? Let's take a look. Nakata is a bit slow because of a weird accident he had when he was a kid. Back in 1944, during a school trip to the mountains, all the kids fell into a trance for a few minutes, but Nakata didn't wake up for 2 weeks. When he did wake up, Nakata couldn't read or write anymore, but gained some strange powers, like talking to cats and making animals fall from the sky. Back to the present, Nakata makes a small income searching for lost cats, and with his ability, he has become pretty good at it. One day, while searching for a lost cat named Goma, Nakata meets an odd guy named Johnny Walker, who's kidnapping cats and killing them to eat their heart. Johnny Walker asks Nakata to end his life, promising to stop killing cats if he does. Nakata, though he's innocent at heart, does it. Now, it turns out that this Johnny Walker guy is actually a well-known Japanese sculptor, and he's Kafka Tamura's dad. After all that goes down, Nakata decides to go to the police, but the young cop on duty just can't believe his story. So Nakata figures it's time to leave his hometown, Nakano, and he sets off to who knows where with the young truck driver named Hoshino. Nakata isn't running away from the police though. He feels he's got a mission to complete. He ends up traveling to Shikoku looking for this mysterious entrance stone. Hoshino, with a little help from Colonel Sanders, finds the stone in an old forgotten shrine and brings it back to their hotel. Moving forward to the next chapter, it is all about how a simple evening at a bar alters Hoshino's perspective on life, and what unforeseen paths will Nakata and Hoshino's quest for the mysterious entrance stone lead them to. One evening, while Nakata is asleep, Hoshino heads out and finds himself in a little bar. He grabs a coffee. Turns out it's really good, and Beethoven's Archduke Trio is playing in the background. Hoshino starts talking to the bartender and surprisingly gets into classical music, which he never liked before. From then on, Hoshino sees life differently, thinking of himself as an empty being. He and Nakata drive around on a Mazda Familia, searching for something Nakata will only know when he finds it. They wander around for 2 days, and Hoshino, making a wrong turn, accidentally leads them to the Komura library. Nakata realizes that's exactly where they needed to be. They wait for a guided tour by Mrs. Psyche, the librarian. When Nakata meets Mrs. Psyche, he feels a strong urge to talk to her. They talk about the entrance stone and how Nakata opened it. Turns out, Mrs. Psyche did the same thing long ago. She hands Nakata some papers, her life story since her boyfriend's death, and asks him to burn them. Nakata and Mrs. Psyche feel strangely connected, like they've known each other forever. After they talk, all the bad stuff in Mrs. Psyche's memories just fades away. Then she asks Nakata to leave and she gets lost in her thoughts. When Oshima checks on her, he finds her dead. Nakata and Hoshino head back, but before they can close the entrance stone, Nakata can't help but fall asleep on the futon. The next day, Hoshino tries to wake Nakata up, but shockingly, he finds out Nakata has passed away. It's like the job of closing the entrance has now been passed on to Hoshino like a legacy, but he can't just close it right away. He needs to wait for a sign. The following day, a black cat named Toro shows up, and they talk in a language they both understand. Toro tells him that in the evening, some creature whose shape or size Toro doesn't know will come for the entrance. Hoshino's got to stop it no matter what. So what sinister force is behind the eerie noises in the room with Nakata's body, and how will Hoshino confront it? It is also revealed the mysterious connection between Kafka Tamura and Nakata and their parallel journeys. So that night, Hoshino hears weird noises in the room where Nakata's body is. Gathering all his courage, he goes in with a kitchen knife and a hammer, ready for anything. He sees this white, slim, long thing coming out of Nakata's mouth. Hoshino tries to kill it, but it just keeps regenerating. The creature is slowly moving towards the stone entrance, but Hoshino realizes the only way to stop it is to close the entrance. Putting all his effort into it, he finally flips the stone, making sure it's really dead. He puts the pieces in a garbage can, and the next day, burns them in a bonfire. Now, Kafka, Tamura, and Nakata never actually meet, but their stories are woven together by all these fantastic events and mysterious coincidences. we'd like to leave you with this quote from Crow that probably encaptures the whole point of the novel and makes a really good outro, to be honest. Once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of this storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what this storm's all about. And that was Kafka on the Shore. We hope you have enjoyed this novel. Feel free to share your views in the comments section below. We'll be back with another book soon. Till then, best of luck!